Leonardo da Vinci, 1452 to 1519. The Last Supper, 1495-1498. Depicted is Jesus and his 12 disciples. Elements of design: the color within the clothing, shapes within the room and windows, texture of the wall it is painted on. Leonardo used linear perspective, creating depth on flat material. This was a technique created in the Renaissance time period. The Last Supper. The emphasis is on the shape element of design. The large square windows put emphasis on Jesus. On either side of Jesus is 6 disciples, creating perfect harmony and balance. The size of the subject to the room are proportional, along with the foods on the table. Pattern of squares on the ceiling and the 4 tapestries lining the walls on either side of Jesus create pattern. The pattern of the tapestries lead your eye to the center point, being Jesus. Leonardo created the central point, being Jesus, emphasizing his importance. This was done through the use of one-point perspective. The gesture and body language of the disciples suggest agitation. Jesus appears to be calm, creating a mix of emotions. The work is successful in portraying the betrayal of the disciples based on Judas reaching for the same food as Jesus. Leonardo does a great job at putting the emphasis on Jesus by placing him within the center window along with the leading lines. Religious or not, this painting represents real human emotions such as anger, betrayal, and inquisition. The work was successful when it comes to the elements of design, but unsuccessful in the application process. Due to the experimental trial, the oil paint was not fully dried to the wall. Within 2 years, the paint began to peel. When judging Renaissance art, you have to consider realism, natural posing, showing emotion, light and shadows, creating form, rich colors, and detailed backgrounds. For the time period, I do not feel as though this work was very unique. Leonardo uses the same elements of design as most artists of his time period. He did introduce facial expressions to depict human emotion. Mona Lisa, 1503 to 1519. Oil painting on wood panel, portrays a woman in a half-body realistic portrait style. Strong use of texture and light shadowing make the skin look soft and natural. Body position is turned towards the viewer, typically in Italian art of the century. The woman's identity has never been proven, only theories exist. Her eyes resting on the rule of thirds create emphasis. Background is well balanced behind the subject, who is sitting centered. Facial features are proportional along with the sizing of the hands. There is repetition in the use of texture of both skin and the background, creating a soft, natural appearance. Colors also repeat, which create harmony for the viewer's eye. The lines in the background create rivers and valleys, leaning your eyes towards the subject. The tree line behind the subject lead directly towards her face on either side. The use of lines, texture, light, shadow, and color bring harmony to this piece. Through the use of shadows, her face is more defined. When looking at this piece, you notice the intriguing smile of the subject, creating the humanitarian aspect of Renaissance artistry. This piece was revolutionary in Renaissance art by introducing three-quarter pose, which became most popular. Leonardo inspired other artists not to rely heavily on fashion, but rather the beauty of the subject themselves. It was further proven the success of this art when King Francis placed it within the royal collection. This work relates to my major of photography because we have learned many different posing styles. This is a classic posing style in photography because it lights the cheekbones very naturally. Overall, this work was great success for Leonardo, making it one of the most famous and well-known pieces in the world. What made this piece stand out was not only the new style of posing, but Leonardo understood the anatomy of the woman's face, creating an intimate depiction of the curves and shadows of her face. The background of rivers and mountains create a dreamlike world, which was new for Leonardo, further proving the impact of his painting on the artistry moving through the Renaissance age. The Mona Lisa continues to make its impact on modern artistry through the sfumato technique. This blurring technique carries depth and realism through the paintings to this very day. The Virgin of the Rocks, 1483 to 1490. Madonna of the Rocks, Milan, Italy. Oil on wood. Depicted is the Virgin Mary, infant John the Baptist, and an angel behind Christ. Design elements include deep space, texture, color, and line work. Realism within natural elements of the background, contrasting light and shadows all express Renaissance artistry. The dominant element is the bright light blue mountain range within the top left. The rocks give a balance between the background and the weight of the subjects in the foreground. The proportions are normal and balanced between subjects. The lines of the rocks are pointing towards the subject of the foreground, leading viewers' eyes to the Virgin Mary. The design elements bring this piece together in harmony, primarily the use of color, texture, and deep space. Viewers feel mesmerized at the aerial landscape within this piece, leaving Leonardo yet again transforming Italian painting. Leonardo successfully depicts the communication between the three figures by giving them hand gestures. He used naturalism successfully through the details in the flowers, the rock formation, and the swirling water. As mentioned in the Mona Lisa review, Leonardo used the sfumato technique, blurring the edges of the subjects to give a smoke effect. This created more natural, skin-like texture, making them three-dimensional. Overall, this is a strong piece when it comes to the textures of the rocks and the realistic skin textures. Where I think it lacks is in the color values of the rocks in the background. They lose dimension in their shading and seem to blend into one another. Leonardo always seemed to make his paintings unique, whether it is with its colorings or new techniques. Within this painting, he used the aerial perspective, which depicts a vast mountain range. The mountains closer to the viewer, a darker shade of blue, while the mountains further away appear to be pale. We can find both the aerial technique and his use of light and shading within modern day art today. Sources used within this presentation.